story that Jim tells about proofreading. No matter how many times you proofread it, what happens when you get home with it?
Well, invariably, no prototype publication survives its first contact with the customer.
You said when you bring them home, a copy falls on the ground, and you see a typo.
Oh, well, this hasn't happened since, let's see, Thursday. So, all right, let's just start there. And I have a proofreading story that I will tell on behalf of a very dear friend. But Thursday's adventure was the arrival of the box of the little booklets for the Napier's Bones project. And there's actually a significant number of lessons in that little publication project that I think are very relevant to anybody that would want to do a booklet project for a calculator program, or perhaps an accessory that goes with it, or something like that. But the fact is that the tools available are just staggering now. We live in a privileged age where we span in our life experiences the boundaries from photo typesetting to digital publishing. And anyhow, Thursday morning's adventure was being all excited about having these little books about Napier's Bones show up, and discovering that despite the PDF proofing that had been done, that some of the images had not been created correctly inside the PDF file, and so I have some bad images in those little booklets. So there you go, Murphy's Law, just been since Thursday. It's a common thing. Now, I'm going to tell Eric Vogel's story, and then I'll turn it loose to you. The most legend. Chuck mentioned an engineer by the name of Grant Garner. Grant was one of the reviewers that helped me with the HP48 handbook that many of you guys are familiar with. He was among the team early there in the lab that helped us with early publication projects, but Eric Vogel was also a proofreader, and he was working, when I joined HP, he was working on the petroleum fluids pack for the HP41, and he discovered that one of the periods in a paragraph was in the wrong font, and went to the typesetting department to complain about it. And they said, "You're nuts." And no, it was not only in the wrong font, but I believe that it was also italicized. So the underlying lesson is not so much the fonts of your punctuation characters, but in putting together a printed project, your review team will make you or break you.
Joseph had some problems with his HP71V book.
Oh, yeah.
Massive. If you've ever had the misfortune of trying to read it, there's at least 2 misprints per page, because when I had it all pretty much finished on my Radio Shack Model 2, sent up the 8-inch floppies to Keith Jarrett to proofread. He printed them immediately without proofreading them, so it's just full of errors. And at the end of the book, I have this offer. I said, you know, there's this free offer. If you send me a postcard with any question on it, I'll send it back to you with an answer. That's the HP71 Answer Man service. And then in parentheses, it says it's not really free. It's included with the price of the book. Well, I got about 2,000 postcards, half of which were asking, what's on this page? I can't read it. So yeah, be sure to proofread whatever you publish.
I noticed when I did my master's thesis, of course, I have the committee. So I handed out, I had a whole bunch of friends read the 153 pages, and it was, ooh, that's better. Did everybody hear that? Anyway, I printed the whole thing out. I go into my fence, I passed it, I changed the title, that's what I had to do to get it all the way through. It goes to the publisher, about 27 people have read it. I open it up, I hand it to my parents, and on the very first page, blah, 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 and, two ands in a row.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the big brain trick. It always gets you. And I didn't notice it till it'd been to the publisher and been hardcovered. So I know. And now I'm going to check all my damn periods. And then I got people like Jim Johnson coming around doing beautiful pictures when I thought mine were beautiful pictures. So I'm going to rewrite that whole chapter. And then somebody comes up with the WPS 34. Now I got to do a chapter on the CL board. And I've just got to, as my wife said to me, you're going to turn that damn thing off. And you're just going to write it, and you're not going to talk to anybody, and then break it into 2 books. Book 1, make it all those funny little LED ready things there, and then hand that out, as Włodek said, and all of you can get really mad and send me nasty grams about everything I wrote, and I'll correct it for all the LCDs.
Well, you know
which is chapter 2.
The printers say the errors don't appear until the ink is on the paper.
Oh, well, in my case, the cover's on the binding. Next.
Cyrille, any stories about proofreading?
French to English, English to French. Any translation problems?
Well, I've co-published one book, which is actually a booklet that you would be able, that you were able to put in your 48 pouch, which had all the system RPL addresses, calls, because in France we did not have all the HP tools and stuff like that, so we were programming directly, basically in hex. It also had all the assembly instruction with all the CPU timing, which was very important. And that project went fairly well, and we didn't have much issues, except when it came to signing the bloody contract, and I had to put my name, I kid you not, 100 times on that paperwork, pain in the butt. So not much funny stuff there. I also have my name in another relatively big book because I contributed a lot of programs. But the interesting one is the last one, which is an initiation to assembly programming for the HP48, which was written mostly by a friend of mine. But I came to his place over New Year's Eve. And, right at his place at 7 o'clock or something like that, and he's here. Well, for that book, I need to write a chapter on graphing, on how to, draw graphic on the calculator in assembly language, of course, for animation, games, and stuff like that. And, it was the 2 of us and another guy. I'm here, where's your computer? Let me get at it. And by 5 in the morning, the chapter was finished. It was probably 50 pages. I never proofread it or reread it. I gave it to him, and it was printed just like so. So, 7 hours, and here's a chapter for you. How long have you been on your book again?
Okay, me. Oh yeah, let's not be nasty to Geoff anymore. Let's assume Geoff has his book ready. The next problem is marketing. You've got a booklet, you print it, and unless it's very popular, you can't sell it. Jeremy, that must have been a very good seller and very popular.
I love this.
Cool. Jeremy's synthetic programming guide for the HP41, a real hit among PPC fans a few years ago.
Actually, this is an interesting book. I went to Richard and I said, I've got this information. I want to give it to Carrier Einstein to put in his whatever it was, collection of notes. And he said, oh, well, why didn't you just publish it yourself? And I was like, oh, well, all right. And then I said, well, do you think it's ready? And he said, no, I don't know what he said, but I went to where and I came back and I said, I thought it was probably maybe half ready. And I said, well, how ready do you think it is? And he says, oh, about 95%. And I said, bloody. So I put together a few pages and had a look at it, and off it went to the printer. And that was edition 1, and I've sold 1,000 of them. And so then I thought I ran out, so I made this version. And this one has the 41 self-portrait using the old 143 printer. And oh yes, and it's printed on plastic. It's not Tyvek, it's Kimdura. Tyvek is paper encrusted with plastic. Kimdura is pure plastic, so this you can put in a washing machine. Because I thought, if it's always in a surveyor's pocket, it's going to get filthy, so you can wash it. so you can keep on reading it. So, but a quick funny story. I also published a dictionary, and And when I first published it, I made it myself, and then it was then picked up by a publisher. But the first cover was, I'm always testing the world, as I mentioned yesterday, and I made all the barcodes so that Amazon could sell it, and the price was $20.01 in the US. So all those things that you buy for $19.99, you get a spare penny. I got them. And the cost in England was £12 and a shilling or 5 pence. So that which is exactly a guinea. And then in Canada it was free, which is a joke, but nobody ever seemed to worry about it. And it sold just fine.
I got the joke. I got the joke.
Thank you very much. Now, Jeremy sold his little pocket guide very successfully, but there are all sorts of nasty catches to this game. Jim produced a lovely book, but when I asked why it didn't fit in the 48 case, he said it doesn't really matter, it'll be next to the case, not inside the case. And poor Jim then didn't sell very many of these compared to those produced by Synthetics, which did fit inside the case. And Jim ended up telling people, you have to cut the corners off. That was your marketing ploy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hold this for a moment. Now there's another beautiful quick reference guide for the 42S, produced by Dan Smith. Now, everyone who uses the 42S or an emulator should have one of these. But Dan never actually publicized these. He left them in his attic until I picked them up. Now they're all in my attic. So if anyone needs a 42S guide, I've got a whole bunch of them, and they are beautiful. But one of the problems with marketing is you've got to tell people that it's there. So, anyone, how did people find out about your books?
I think I still have some of these at home, but they've got a paper cover instead of a. So anyway, yeah. Thanks.
I happen to be in London the 12th, the second weekend, for 48 hours. So I'm going over to your attic.
Okay, I've got a whole lot of stuff in my attic. Okay, Jim.
The genesis of my publishing enterprise is actually inspired by that 42S quick reference card that I thought that was pretty elegant. HP actually carried that, I think, as a, there might be an HP part number on that thing.
It has a button.
And, there's a really critical part of the success for accessories for calculators was HpCalc, and so the HpCalc catalog was essentially the Bible of the ecosystem of calculators and their accessories. And you know, Jim Carter and the guys there and Richard worked there had a profound influence on the lives of a tremendous number of people by pulling together all of the things that were available during the dawn of the PC revolution, when you know, calculators really were the first portable computer. And that catalog made the business decision to publish a book possible, because you had some sense that you really would sell some of these things. Now that's essentially gone today. The climate has changed, HpCalc is gone, and so I think that we had something of a golden age where there was this central repository of information and accessibility to calculator products, but more importantly, accessibility to vendors who were very small. You know, a bunch of us guys operating out of our garages, basically doing these things. And to navigate those waters today involves, you know, setting up storefronts on eBay and Amazon and using social media and all of that, and it's very diverse. You don't get that laser focus that the HpCalc catalog gave you. So I think the bar is a lot higher now to doing a niche product like that. And in case you think doing that for calculators is a strange niche, the one I've chosen for my retirement business is essentially reproductions of 17th and 18th century scientific instruments and orreries, and you know, the Napier's bones thing I showed you yesterday, and I can assure you that that's dramatically more obscure than calculator stuff. And so I want you to at least have the confidence that there's one business model that has an even lower probability of success than doing a book for calculator stuff. But we have, I think collectively, we have a challenge in front of us as a community to sort out interesting projects for, you know, certainly the audience here in the room, but more importantly going forward, you know, how's the next generation going to have their HpCalc? How is the next generation going to do these innovations and bring them out? And it's not all gloom and doom. I think if you look at the maker movement and you look at what folks are doing with programs like Kickstarter and crowdsourcing and so on, I think there's new wrinkles to this puzzle, but I think we're at a kind of the low point of the inflection between the success of those levels of endeavors compared to what we had when the HpCalc catalog was in full swing.
Thank you. Yes, we are at a difficult position because we don't know how much to produce, and we aren't yet in the position to produce one-off every time someone needs it. Maybe with your products, you will simply make one whenever somebody asks for them. With books, the great unpublished is one way of doing it. You simply download your books to that company. Anyone who wants a copy simply calls them, sends them an email, and they print one copy for you. But that is a difficult model and it's expensive. Another way to do it is to do it on CD-ROMs or DVD-ROMs, as Jake does it. You make a number of DVD-ROMs, they're not that expensive. Should we be publishing on DVD-ROMs, Jake?
Well, I guess two problems. One which was mentioned is that optical drives are starting to lose popularity. And the second one is the discs themselves have a limited lifetime, and I pulled a disc off the shelf a week or so ago to make a copy of a video from a winter CES meeting in 1989, but the DVD had been made probably 2005, and my master disc wouldn't read. It had dissolved or whatever, and I had to make a new master disc from the digital tape. So, you know, it's a question. Now, Joe could tell you about this newfangled, relatively newfangled M-disc.
M-discs.
Which supposedly last
at least 1,000 years.
They're claiming 1,000 years, and they demonstrate, you know, transferring discs from boiling water to liquid nitrogen and no degradation and that sort of thing.
Wow.
But if the drives start to dry up, I don't know.
There's HP Mag Cloud where you can upload pictures and documents, and then anybody can download it as a PDF, and then they pay for it, and then or they can order the printed book, and it's off the HP's WordPress.
I just purchased a book from Amazon, Kindle Reader type format, for 99 cents. And it was this one guy's adventure on how to make a Hackintosh computer. And it was 20 pages long, you know, it cost $1. And evidently, Amazon will let just anybody submit a file. And then
that's good.
And then they sell it through, you set the price.
The trick is, if it's purely text, you're better off. If you have images, it becomes more complicated. And even if it's purely text, there's a guideline they have. And it's funny because they don't let you basically have a chapter number, because I went to look, I published, and I went to look at the community, and they were saying, well, you know, chapter number is not really that important, chapter title. But if you know how to code in HTML, you're good. And I was able to insert chapter number because they want the TOC to point to your chapter title. So I made the links to the chapter title. I inserted the chapter number so it looks centered and bold, but there's no link to it, and that worked just fine.
You've done this then?
Yeah.
And how many have you sold?
I don't know, 5, 6.
Well, that's one of my dilemmas right now is building this or writing this manual. I like to have it in a spiral bound letter size format so you can spread it out, you can see the pictures. But then, of course, there's the Adobe with all the links that Jake just showed me. So that'll be ready in 4 years. And what I'm going to do with that, of course, now with all the photography, I'm doing high definition photography. So on the Adobe, if I'm using the raw images, which I can then leave in the raw image but size them, etc., you can tap on the file now if it's on your iPad or your computer, and you can bring that little 32K chip in the 42S and all that sort, or you can bring it right up to the full size of the iPad. So I've got both those. But then when you run into Adobe, by the way, this is going to be for cost. I'm not doing this for profit. But one guy gets one Adobe and suddenly it's on the museum and it's downloadable. I mean, that's something, what do people do about that? I know you can get security, but there's always somebody. Like Richard. That's a question.
We have a person.
Yes.
Many of the people in this room will remember Gary Friedman.
Oh, yeah.
Now, his business model, he produces books dedicated to Sony cameras. Mm-hmm. And he's tried several things. Now, he also offers his photography for sale. Now, if there's something that's easily stolen off the internet, it's your photography. And he has investigated every conceivable means of protecting his images. And he comes to the conclusion that he really can't. But with regards to his books, I think he offers them free download by the chapter, if I'm not mistaken. Now what he does is that you can get the whole book, but it costs you $60 or something. So he makes a tremendous profit on each book. And he tells me that a small percentage, I don't know if it's 5 to 10%, will order because they want it there. And so he prints it on demand, and he makes a very good living off these books.
I had the fortune of sitting beside him 2 years ago at HHC 2011, I had to do the math. And one of the things he said is, if I send a book to Thomas in the Adobe format, we put Thomas's name on every page. And then when Thomas downloads it to HP Museum without my knowledge, not you, just Thomas. Sorry, Thomas. So there are these things to think about. So that's part of my dilemma right now.
There's another approach. There's a British publisher that what they do actually, they're counting on that and they put ads in their books. Oh. So the more people copy, and that's how they, before they publish, they go to whatever.
So chapter 3 calls out McDonald's.
And they put ads, and yeah, so they use piracy to their advantage.
One of the things we did for software during the meta-kernel time, for those of you who remember that, is we would send the libraries of the 128 kilobyte to people who were ordering and buying the thing, and every time I would rebuild the library or the batch, and the xlibs would be permutated, and that permutation was saved with the name of the person. So the first time something got somewhere, I looked at the permutation of xlibs, and I had the name of the person who had leaked it, and I could go to him and yell at him. Interestingly enough, close enough. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not feeling very well, so my speech is blurry, and I'm salivating because I'm kind of a little bit sick trying to fight it. It's hard for me to talk. No, that's it.
And in French.
Yeah, that's not helping. That word again. Enough. I actually did read about somebody trying to patent doing that for books. Of course, I would claim having prior art, but it's not the first time somebody gets a patent for something there's prior art on, and who am I to talk about that, since I've been one of the founders there. But that's one way that you can insert a digital signature in a book in a way which is not visible. I mean, if it's permutation of some word in a paragraph or two sentences, sometimes you can do it in a way which is not visible and doesn't hurt, is not problematic to the book, and that's a way to put a digital signature that nobody's ever going to see.
So I could put a typo exclusive to that individual.
Exactly.
And then be able to search that typo and go, oh, that's the one I sent to.
Just tell them that's why the typo's there.
Or tell them that's why the typo's there. Okay.
Customized.
Well, there are going to be typos, but you'll never know now.
Wouldn't it be more prophylactic just to put his name?
It's easy to remove, to search for and remove the name.
Yeah, no, this sounds fantastic because Gary, sorry,
Yeah.
you go.
Typo.
Italicize periods. I'm going to try a business model which is following the Hacker Dictionary, which is the book is available freely online, but then you can, if you want hard copy, then you have to pay for it.
If you don't have a printer.
It's cheaper to buy it printed usually than to print it yourself.
No, that's true. Absolutely. No, that's a good point.
Like you say, Sarah. Speaking of short run printing, I had a rather amazing experience in the Napier's Bones booklet that I was able to, I can go to Staples and I can get them to make a really bad copy for about $15. But I knew that the different printer vendors were aggressively pushing short-run print job capabilities to their customers, and so I got a little persistent about calling around the United States to some of the different short-run booklet printers. And to my astonishment, there is a printer in Portland, Oregon, who is running at half the price of pretty much everybody else in the United States. And so, instead of $15 to $20 a booklet here, it's $7. Now this guy has a piece of magic that I do not yet fully understand.
Have you tried them?
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I brought to this. That's the booklet that's here with Napier's Bones. The quality is spectacular. So he's got a printer that's something like an HP Indigo, or perhaps it's a small short-run OSE. The lesson that I would like people thinking about books to take away from here is that as the printer vendors push down the cost of operations for these big web presses, and the finishing equipment side of the equation increases the flexibility of guys to bind together small book runs, the costs are going to keep dropping. And it's astonishing to me to see how fast those job costs are going down and how few copies are actually economical to produce. And I kind of thought that was a joke, and then my friend Ed took me out to a T420 press and he said, give me a PDF. So I gave him a PDF, and that thing came out at 800 feet a second in between a print run of checks and a print run of check statements. And the finishing equipment said, sure, and stuck it over there, and it was done. And that's science fiction to see that happen. So as the everybody says, printing is over, paper is dead. No, paper is not dead. Paper is getting cheap. And the quality of a couple of card payments on something that might not move. So it's sane to do full color proof prints now to go out to your review team, so that they're actually looking at the real thing and helping you spot, in the worst case, the periods that are in the wrong font, but more generally the case where you missed the entire point of what you promised the reader you were going to say.
I like that one.
Okay, should we wind it up?
Thank you, Jim. Okay. Oh, Gene.
Eric still prints on-demand copies of the math book that I wrote using the 10B and the 12C. And he took to creating PDFs as well for online sales, where he does embed the name of the customer should it show up. But back to when we were talking about proofing, I didn't have a review team. It was just me. And I proofed and proofed and proofed that thing. I decided to quit when I had a dream that there was a $1,000 amount in the book without the comma after the 1. And when I got up the next morning, I found it. So I decided that was enough. So sometimes, Geoff, you can know when it's time to quit.
Yeah, I'm close, definitely.
Your wife will also tell
but
you.
I do have one point. I'm waiting for the cost to come down, as Jim said, and that's why I've been waiting 5 years. It's actually been
Okay, question?
Yeah, there's actually an issue that beyond the media degrading over time, and that is that things are starting to disappear off the internet. Some things that can't be found anywhere else. There have been a few cases where I've gone looking for some specific information about a calculator or a small computer or something, and it will link to a page that someone has rehosted, but then they link back to the original page to get the file that you need in order to use the information. Well, it was on GeoCities, and GeoCities doesn't exist anymore. And I'm usually pretty good at being able to do searches and using the Wayback Machine and stuff like that, but it's getting harder and harder to do that. So that's actually a good reason to commit some of this stuff to paper, so that it's permanent and it's in more than one set of hands. Which brings up another thing, and that is, I am a data hoarder. When I find stuff on the net, because it's valuable to me and I know it can disappear, I save it. I have it organized and archived, and it's mine. And I think that there are other people who may be doing this too.
Richard. Oh, yeah. Richard has been telling us to do it for ages.
But I'm not going to be around forever, and neither is Richard. And you know, this is basically the most reliable backup, is for more than one of us to have copies of this stuff. But someday, it's not going to do any good unless people know where those are. So I wonder if there's some way we might have a registry of, hey, I've saved a copy of this stuff. You know, I've saved it with contact information or URLs if it's accessible on the web. You know, email address if it's not accessible on the web. Just kind of a place where everybody could say, you know, if we have a nuclear war, come here.
Okay, yes, that's valuable. Richard?
Where we keep the registry.
One of the issues we have is we need a manual for a particular calculator. Now, I have just modest internet searching skills. Okay, I'm sure there are people who are better at searching than I am on the internet. But I think a useful project for this group would be to create a list of manuals and where they may be found. But that's not the information I want, really.
Every language.
And French. We take baby steps first. French can be number 2. Right? And for what I want is, what HP calculator manual is not on the internet? And that's what we should work on, filling that hole.
Give me 2 minutes. You want 2 minutes? Richard, no, how badly do we need to tie up?
No, we can have it on the internet in 2 minutes.
Okay. Are we winding up, Richard?
We're winding up because we got a lot of things to do yet.
Okay, I'll finish with the story that Jim told you that he hasn't said. He says whenever and however much work you put into proofreading, you will carry the first box of books or the first handful of books home, and you'll drop one. It'll open on a page, and you'll pick it up, and there's a typo. No matter how hard you did it. Well, in my case, it's even worse than that. I didn't need to let it fall open. There's a typo on the front cover. The 2 periods are different sizes. Thank you.